Happy Climate Week, yeah? It's Friday of Climate Week, everyone. Give yourselves a round of applause. You made it. You made it through, my friends. I'm barely standing, but that's okay. I'm kidding. I've been really energized by this week. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dani Nierenberg. I am co-founder with Bernard Pollock, who is roaming around somewhere, of Food Tank. Hi, Bernard. Which is a research and advocacy organization devoted to telling stories of hope and success in food and agriculture systems around the globe. We do this with the aim to inspire, motivate, and ultimately activate positive transformation in how we produce and consume food. I'm so delighted to be in this particular space. It's the 100th anniversary of WNYC. Please give them a round of applause. And I'm really excited about this summit on the role that technology can play in creating affordable, nutritious food, and the role it can have in helping prevent food waste. All really important things. And I will introduce my heroine, Karen Washington, in just a second. Before I do that, I want to thank the partners who made today possible. FlashFood, give them a round of applause. Apeel, give them a round of applause. Refed, give them a round of applause. And Divert, round of applause. What great partners to work with, all great collaborators, and I'm thrilled that we could do this. Before we jump into conversation, a little bit of housekeeping. If I cut somebody off or I cut a panel short, please forgive me later. We're trying to create a really dynamic environment here where we can have real conversation and be blunt and honest and transparent with one another. We don't have breaks built in, so step out when you need to. Be quiet though when you step out there, and get air and water and whatever. I also hope that you'll join the conversation by using the hashtag ClimateWeekNYC. To share the content with others. If you have any critiques or suggestions, my phone is right over there, and I'll be checking it when I'm not on stage, and you can email me at Danielle@foodtank.com, and I'll try to respond in real time. So now I'm thrilled to introduce Karen Washington. She's really a woman who needs no introduction here in New York. She's a farmer and owner at Rise and Root Farm. She's an amazing advocate, mentor, educator. I could go on and on, but she knows how much I love and adore her. Please give her a round of applause. Karen, I've had the opportunity to listen to you over the years. You've taught me personally so much, and one of the things that stands out for me is you told me that communities don't need people who look like me to come into their spaces and tell them what to do. What they need is capital. And they need investment. How do we change the paradigm that exists where we're telling communities what they need and what to do?
Yes, so we should start off by asking communities what they want instead of what they need, because asking us what we want comes from a position of deficit. Need comes from a position of deficit. Ask us what we want comes from a position of power. And so for years, I've been sort of trying to bring that to the forefront. And then also, we don't need parachuters. We don't need people to tell us what to do. We need people to listen to what the community wants. And so I have been on this mission to make sure that voices and people that look like me have a seat at the table. And if we don't have a seat at the table, we're gonna make our own table and have our own table and chairs. And so that's what it's all about.
You've definitely made your own table, but it's important that folks who do look like you, and especially young folks who look like you, have that space and that voice. Have you seen enough of that this week during Climate Week?
Oh, without a doubt. It's been really, really inspirational to see people, but also see diversity. For so long, spaces when it came to climate change was homogenized, sort of. And so now you're starting to see more people of color, because people of color are being affected. When it comes to climate change, hunger and poverty, we know where the impact is going to be.
Yeah.
And it's mostly going to be in poor neighborhoods, both urban and rural, and people of color.
Yeah, I think there's still this sort of unrealization that the people most affected by climate change will be poor folks, especially farmers, black and brown folks all over the world. And we need to sort of change that sort of misconception. And you're right about, like, it's usually men in suits who are on these stages telling the rest of us what to do.
Yeah, now it's women.
It's great. It's great. Give that a round of applause, everyone. Karen, one of the things that you've said is you've called growing food an act of resistance. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think because it's like if you look at food justice and food sovereignty. So for me, food justice is the transformation of the food system to eliminate some of the disparities that we see. And for me, food justice is a movement. And so I tell people, don't pad your RFP and your programs with the definition, because that means nothing. It's a movement. So in order for you to do food justice work, you have to be actively moving to work on the injustice that you see. So it's a movement. Then it comes to food sovereignty, which is really good because sometimes people get it interchanged. And so for me, I want to give props to La Via Campesina and the Global South of peasants that brought that concept to reality. And so what it is, in essence, is to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. And people want to have the opportunity to self-govern. They want to have the opportunity to control their food system and the habitat that they live in, their environment that they live in. They want to control it in such a way that they want to be able to grow their own food, have their own land, make their own rules, and get government in the capitalistic system that exploits, right, and extracts out of our business. And so now you're starting to see people moving towards that movement of being self-sufficient and self-reliant.
And this justice and injustice component, that's deeply ingrained, especially in American society, because of inherent racism. And we have the control of the food system has not been in the hands of the people who need it to be. And there's this system of food apartheid. Can you talk a little bit about that and why it still exists?
Yeah, so I coined the term food apartheid because people were telling me that I lived in a desert. So I lived in a food desert, and what that meant was that I didn't have access to food. I didn't have supermarkets. I had a long way to travel, and I said, wait a second, I live in the boogie down Bronx, and I have the fast food, the junk food, the processed food. What I don't have are healthy food options. That's number one. And number two is people in the desert was saying that they have food. And then I saw that the word started to change from food desert to food mirage and food swamp. And I'm saying, come on, folks. No one was really talking about the root causes of what was happening in a food system that wasn't for us or by us. And so I wanted people to start having a hard conversation about the food system. And let's be honest, folks. Everybody knows where the crappy food goes. Everyone knows where the organic, nice food goes. Everyone knows where poor housing is and where people live. And everybody knows where people with privilege and power live. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about how we integrate the food system with social issues. So for me, I realized that, in my community garden at the time, when I was hearing so many social issues, I realized, well, Karen, you just can't focus on food alone. That there were so many social issues that I had to sort of contend with. Social issues around the environment, high asthma, health, diet-related diseases, economic, poor wages, and education, poor education. And so these are things that for me was a catalyst in the work that I was doing, why I try to use that word, food apartheid. Don't use that word, food deserts, around me.
Yeah, bravo to that. Thank you. Because I think what I've come across a lot this week is people trying to change the semantics of how we talk about these things and the vocabulary. Words really matter when we're talking about the climate crisis and when we're talking about people.
Yes, well, as you know, words do matter because we have a particular person who has really that's something detrimental, I wanted to say, about a group of people in these United States and how it has impacted people. Words make a difference. Certain words hurt. And for me, as a farmer, what I'm trying to do is look at farming in terms of increasing diversity. And I say that because as a black woman, as a black farmer in New York State, out of 57,000 farmers, only 100, maybe now 39 or 40, 140 are black. And then when you try to instill and let people understand that there is a lack of land and resources and opportunities, then you get farmers that are saying, well, you know what, we can't give to black farmers because it's reverse racism. And I say to those farmers out there, we pride ourselves on diversity. We pride ourselves on looking at different fruits and vegetables and color and our diversity. And when it comes to our animals, our diversity, why can't you stand behind us to make sure that the agricultural system has a diversity of different colors and ethnicity of their farmers and farm workers?
Bravo. Yeah, it's not just diversity of what we eat, it's diversity of practices, thought, people, it's all of those things. I want to talk a little bit about the sort of history of violence in the food system in the United States and why folks who are black and brown don't have access to land and all of the things that you mentioned.
I think, be honest with you, I think is people with power are afraid to give it up. People with power and privilege are afraid to give it up because, as soon as a person of color wants to move into a all-white neighborhood, there are roadblocks. If people want to start their own business, there's roadblocks. And I think that the system is based on people's personal beliefs. They bring their bias, they bring their trauma, they bring their stress, and they bring their fear. They bring their fear, and a lot of it stems from what is seen in the media. I could tell you, so I live two lives. So I live the black life and I live part of the white life. And I say life, and I say that because I worked in spaces where it was predominantly white. I live in spaces where predominantly people of color, but there are a majority of whites that have never set foot in a community of color. And so their reference is what they see and hear on the media. And a lot of that is portrayed in violence. If you turn on the TV, all you're going to see is a person of color, doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, and that puts fear. And so as a result, you have a group of people saying, I don't want those type of people. Everyone know when they say those type of people in my neighborhood. So like I said, words hurt. But what I want people to understand is that the American dream is for everyone to have an opportunity to live in freedom, to live without fear, to be able to have a roof over their head, food that they can feed their family. People are trying to survive to do that, but yet there are roadblocks and there's institutions that block that. And so what you have, a system of the haves and the have-nots, you have the systems of whites versus black, you have this system that polarizes the human element of what makes us human.
Yeah.
And so, again, people with power and privilege that centers that power and privilege that don't want to give it up stand in the way. But when I tell people with power and privilege, you got three options. Number one, you could give it up. And some people are doing that. They're giving up their land. They understand that it's important to give up land. You can share it. A lot of people are sharing their land, their resources. Or the third one is going to be taken away from you, and it's going to be the new revolution. And I say that because you cannot continue to push and push and push people out of housing, out of food, out of water, and eventually out of air without them revolting. And so let's not get to that point, because there's going to come a time when, it's like, people are being displaced when it comes to gentrification. People are being displaced, and people look back and say, you know what? I used to live there, but I no longer live there. Now I'm on the street. And if you get a group of people and a population of people that continue to look back where they were because of the opulence and privilege of some people, then there's going to be a massive revolt. And so from my lips to God's ears, you don't want that to happen, but you have to understand the pressure that so many people, poor people, are having today.
Right on. Thank you so much, Karen. I want to flip the conversation a little bit because you've done so much good work here in New York City, and I want to give you a chance to talk about some of those community-led projects and what you've seen sort of unfold in the food and agriculture space here in New York.
Yeah, so as a matter of fact, this morning at 9 o'clock, I had a meeting with the head of FSA. A couple of months ago, the USDA is now getting into urban ag. I don't know what took them so long, into urban ag. And so the head of FSA was there talking about some of the programs that they have. So I just went up to him and I said, you need to come out to my farm and see what's going on. And sure enough, he came. 9 o'clock he came because they do have programs that are for farmers. But again, we have to teach the USDA, especially beginning farmers, is that we don't need loans, we need grants. That's number one. And then when it comes to technology, we need technology that's affordable. Okay, we need technology that's affordable. And then we also need training. You know, we need training, education, and assistance. So those are the things that I was bringing with him. And so what has changed from me starting my community garden back in 1988 is now people are talking about urban agriculture. They're talking about it more. It's not just community gardens, and it's not, well, you know, there's these big companies that are doing agro-tech, which is all well and good, but how can we use urban ag as a broad scope of innovation, of people that are doing the work to help feed people? Because for so long, I felt that it was people with power and privilege were saying, we have the essence, we have the solution. And it's like, wait a second, we've been growing food for so long, you can't just push us to the side. So now what you're starting to see, especially with government, is like they're listening to all sorts of people that are trying to grow food in an innovative way. There's a place for all of us. In this great country, we should not have hunger and poverty. We shouldn't. And so if there are ways that we can stem the tide of hunger and poverty, it's just long as that everybody has, like I said, a seat at the table, then we can end something that for so long we have been dealing with. I am 70 years old. I got the gray hair, I got the scars, and it's time for us to start thinking about how to end hunger and poverty in a way, because we grow enough food, y'all. You know we grow enough food. And that food is wasted. And so how do we get it so that everybody has a right to healthy food, clean water, a place over their head, and to be safe, to feel safe with one another. So I'm still on this trek. You know, they call me Mama K now because of the age and the gray hair. And so what I'm trying to do is be the vessel for the next generation of people that's coming behind me so I can open these doors a little bit, and they're gonna break the doors wide open for change to happen. And I'm excited about that.
Thank you for opening those doors for so many folks. You mentioned the value of food, and it seems to me like a few years ago when we were in the midst of the pandemic that there was a greater appreciation among a lot more folks for all of the labor and love and time and people that go into creating what ends up on our plates. Do you think we've lost that? Do you think we've forgotten what we learned?
You know, we always tend to go back to what we feel is comfortable. You know, I remember at a time where who were the essential workers? They were the farmers, the food workers, the laborers. They were the essential workers. And now, people are, again, starting to feel comfortable, but don't be too comfortable, because I think what COVID opened Pandora's box of what it may happen, could happen, probably will happen along the way. And so how do we start preparing ourselves to acknowledge how important the food industry is, how important labor is, how important the farm workers are, the meat workers, the food workers, all those people that have been neglected in a way. So we need to continue to appreciate. Every time, I want people to think that something has happened to the person that puts that seed in the ground, to the plate on your food, and what happens in between that. And so we should dedicate ourselves to make sure we support small farmers farm workers, and I always had a problem with farm workers because aren't they farmers too?
Right.
And look at wages. You know, I was doing this research, and I cannot believe that the federal wage still is $7.90 since 2009. Folks, who can live on $7.90? Where is the outrage to that? Where's the outrage to that? So let's, get on board to make sure that, the cost and value of food is so important. And I tell people that I'm a farmer. My food isn't free, that there's a cost. There's a cost behind it. There's a cost and value. And I want people to understand that we work hard as farmers and growers, and there's a cost and value to that work that we do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Karen, I've been ending each of these panels, or most of them, with a call to action. We're in a really politicized time right now. You mentioned that one person who says some really violent words. What is your call to action for folks right now when everything's so uncertain?
Make yourself feel uncomfortable to be comfortable. Share a meal with somebody that you don't know. Do some shopping for someone that need. What I would do during the holidays is that I would be at in a grocery store, and I can see a person struggling, and I would just go up and say, I'm going to pay for their groceries. Do a little extra. The people in your neighborhood who are hungry. Feed them, invite them over. When people say, well, how do you get people in your community garden? The best way is through food. Have a barbecue, have a meal, do something exciting, and bring people from different ethnicities at the table and start talk. We don't talk to one another. We're busy talking like with the emails and the TikTok and all that kind of stuff, and Instagram and all that kind of stuff, that we've lost that contact of a seat at the table. Let's start doing that. Let's start inviting people at our table, and let's start talking to one another.
I love it. What a perfect point to end on, Karen. Thank you, Mama Kay.
Thank you for having me.